Corporations are killing games. Let's talk about how and why. And we also will talk about why games became woke nowadays.
You're finally woke.
Spoiler alert. It is not because those companies support this ideology.
No.
There are many reasons for this phenomena. Let's discuss them all. The main reason why it all happens is because those corporations fell off. They need to touch some grass and breathe some fresh air. They are out of touch, so to speak. Yes, there is nothing wrong with gamers. If the consumer doesn't like the product, that means that there is something wrong with the proposition. In this case, the quality of the game. Let's talk more specifically. Ubisoft. Ubisoft is probably the most out-of-touch corporation in the industry. Ubisoft has all the resources needed to create good games, but they choose not to. Yes, choose not to. They choose to not develop good games. For example, the story with Skull and Bones. The government of Singapore literally paid Ubisoft to develop Skull and Bones in Singapore, and they literally choose to F around for years. The development has begun in 2013. It took them 11 years to make this mediocre game, and the only reason why Skull and Bones got released is because Singapore government didn't want to let it slide. Now imagine that you started a business, and you hired your friend Anakin as an employee. You gave him a project to do. A couple of years passed and the job isn't done. All he did was getting high every day. What would you do? You would probably check on the project and you would fire Anakin. Yes, that's what you would do, but that's not what Ubisoft would do. Ubisoft would support Anakin and would go high with him. That's literally what happened. For like 8 years, the main Ubisoft office never bothered to check on the project. They were not interested in making the game. And only when they realized that Singapore government won't let it slide, they finally decided to actually develop the game. That's everything you need to know about how Ubisoft develops their games. Not carrying is the motto of Ubisoft. No, I'm not talking about ordinary developers, I'm talking about top management. They decide what will be the course of the games that they develop. They appoint their friends as the top management. Friends who are incompetent and don't know what they're doing. Because of that, every Ubisoft game feels like a copy-paste game. For example, Star Wars Outlaws. That's a game with extreme potential. Literally, if given to another studio, I believe that we could get a really cool game. But no, they have made a stealth open-world game. That's one of the stupidest ideas that I've ever heard. Especially when Kay has no superpowers like for example Corvo and Emily from Dishonored, or without high emphasis on parkour like in old Assassin's Creed games. They could have made a linear story game like Uncharted but in Star Wars universe. Like, what could be better? But no, they have made an open-world Assassin's Creed Odyssey reskin. They can't come to the conclusion that open world is ruining the pacing of the game because that outlaw stuff is happening only in the main story. And in the open world, majority of the times you move freely without feeling any pressure of being an outlaw. They can't think of it because they have no time for it. They are high all the time. Not even mentioning how bad Kay is at stuff that she is doing. Every time she lies, she stutters. Girl, go get a 9-to-5 job. Nobody believes you because you can't lie properly. The game is extremely buggy, the physics is shit. I am convinced that Star Wars Outlaws could be a 10 out of 10 game, if it was developed by some other studio that would actually care and think clearly. Unfortunately, Ubisoft top management is full of Anakins. Now before we move on, if you like this video, leave your like, because it gives motivation. This issue is not just Ubisoft, a lot of gaming corporations fell out of touch. They literally don't know what they're doing. The incompetence is thriving in the gaming industry. Concord, Lawbreaker, Crucible, Anthem, Redfall, and how many battle royales died? That shows that the majority of the gaming corporations don't know what they're doing. It's just greed that drives them. They don't make good games, they make products to make money. No shame in that, of course, but they fail. For example, Concord, a recent story. Concord development cost is $200 million. With those money, they could have found 2 games like Baldur's Gate 3. Yes, Baldur's Gate 3 budget cost was 100 millions. So, instead of developing two games like Baldur's Gate 3, they developed Concord. What is that if not a sign of extreme incompetence? Now, let's finally talk about the wokeness in video games. Why did it become a trend? As I said earlier, it is not because those corporations support this view. Quite the opposite. Just a couple years earlier, we were getting bombarded by the news of new cases of harassment, for example, in those corporations. So, if it isn't because of the views of those corporations, why is it? Because of money. You see, throughout the last 2 decades, gaming became a lot more popular. It became a legit hobby. Before that, it was viewed as just a toy for kids. Nowadays, gaming is the most popular in its history. That caused the market growth. However, the gaming market kinda hit the ceiling. Its growth slowed down. The corporations didn't like that, they wanted more customers. Thus came the idea of representation. The idea is that the more groups of people you'll represent in your game, the more people will play it. The experience shows that it doesn't really work. And as a target audience shifts from the core audience that plays the game to imaginary audience that doesn't, the games like Concord fail. The experience shows that you can substitute gameplay with representation. In practice, that almost always hurts the sales, rather than helps. The big pros, though, for the corporation is that they can shift the blame for the fail of the game on the bad gamers that are toxic. The filmmakers are doing it all the time, even more often than the gaming corporations. Now, if you like this video, consider subscribing, because I have a lot of interesting videos for you to check out. Now, the cure for it is touching the grass, getting in contact with reality. The issue though is that there are not a lot of game developers out there. So because of that, often a lot of gamers are kinda being forced to play those games, or play nothing. Also sometimes the gamers might like the particular IP that is held by a corporation like the ones that we have talked about. For example me, I'm almost certain that I will play Dragon Age Veilguard, unless it's gonna get extremely awful reviews. A lot of gamers are experiencing the same. There is no other place to get a Dragon Age game, so you either play it or you don't. Now, nevertheless, the reality will always knock on the door. New and new game developers arise, and they create new cool games and new IPs. Round 8 Studio with Lies of P, Warhorse Studio with Kingdom Come Deliverance, CD Projekt Red with The Witcher and Cyberpunk is also a relatively new game studio. Shift Up with Stellar Blade. Hate to say it because I think the game is overhyped, but the game Science with Black Myth Wukong, and many more. Thus, these companies create competition on the market. So big corporations will be forced to touch the grass, or they will eventually die off. The market is working and it heals itself by providing new developer teams, so we won't have to play bad games. Trust in the market and subscribe to the channel, because I have a lot of interesting videos for you to check out, and many more are on its way. So subscribe to not miss them. See you later.